From your perspective, in terms of diversity, how has the Lindau meeting sort of evolved?
Well, I think you must have numbers here that you should check. What I say, my perception is more or less correct. It seems to me that my impression is that in the first years, and I wasn't really here in the very early years, that most of the participants were German, the biggest group. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And incidentally, just for my information, let's say in the first meeting, what was the distribution between Germans, other Europeans, and other non-Europeans? Do you know those numbers by any chance?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know them either.
Yeah.
But in the early meetings, at least, my impression was that perhaps as many as half of the young participants were German.
Yeah, I think it was only open for German citizens until, I'm not sure about the year, until other people from other countries were invited to.
And now it's a wonderfully colorful combination. And yes, I come to diversity from a different personal interest. My personal interest is energy, and I think we have a scandalous situation where the developed countries use up an overwhelming fraction of the total energy of the globe, and there is no profit. See, I'm not a prophet by nature. I do work on clean energy, but it seems in America, for example, this is population at large doesn't really want to hear about clean energy, and it's a terribly important problem, particularly in some countries where people just can't afford any of this expensive energy. So I think these meetings have done a very good job in shifting the balance from Eurocentric American emphasis to a broad global emphasis, because energy and, for example, global warming, they are global phenomena. And so they need a global perspective, and I'm very happy to see that that's more and more reflected here.
Yeah. What kind of diversity do you find important to try and clarify that term, like diversity of thought, diversity of cultures, perspectives? You mentioned you need a global community in order to focus on these global problems.
Yes, so I was just talking and thinking in answering you about the diversity of the participants. And now that's a different thing from diversity of thought. You can but I have learned to think really globally. Now, I'm well qualified to try to do this because in one respect, I think, in my own person, I represent diversity rather well. For example, I've had 4 nationalities. Is that diverse?
I think so, yeah.
One very undesired. I saw the light of day as an Austrian. But then I saw the light of Hitler marching into Austria. That was bad enough. But the whole population of Austria going crazy over Hitler coming in, that was even worse. And then my nationality was changed. Simultaneously, this gentleman, Mr. Hitler, changed my nationality and at the same time made it impossible for me to live in Austria. And unlike the rest of my family, my sister and I managed to get out and survive. Now, so I think what has been, I can relate to my own experiences as a young person because I was dependent at first entirely on myself, and then other people, like the people who support Lindau, provided me with the opportunity to study and to become a scientist. So I'm thrilled with this environment, and other people think it's crazy that I come all the way from California for this meeting, but it's one of the things I look forward to. Okay, next question. So you see, you've noticed that I right away said, well, why diversity?
Yeah.
What about it? So if you say, eradicate poverty, I wouldn't have asked you that question. But diversity, for what? For what purpose?
Yeah. Well, I guess myself, coming from a diverse background, I feel like it played a really important role in how I became a scientist. So I think in that sense, how do you feel diversity shapes the new generation of young scientists? With the growing diversity of people within science, do you think that has an influence of how techniques in science have also become more diverse?
I'm trying to think of concrete examples. I can't really say it.
Okay.
Because you had, if you go back some decades before this diversity existed, what we call science today was mostly advances in science were mostly coming from the Western world. And since then, I think the inclusion of persons that were not included before well, I would say in that category, the most important inclusion is the much greater inclusion of women. I was looking around my table last night at dinner, and couldn't really count exactly. It was a long table, but I had the feeling we had actually more young women than young men at the table. And somebody checked it up, and I was not right. It was the same number. But, a few decades ago, it would have been perhaps 1 in 10.
Yeah.
And so now, did women bring something specifically new? I consider it really more the fact that, well, women constitute about half the human population, and it just brought in many more people, half of whom had been effectively excluded. Okay? I'm ready for your next question.
Okay, let me just... So, I guess just not here in Lindau, but the scientific global community, how has that global community become more diverse over time? I guess we're sort of asking the same question, yeah.
Well, I've given you what I consider to be the most important part of that increase, has been the making, in the American popular expression, is level the playing field for females and populations, parts of the geographic world that had been excluded. Okay. Are we finished?
I think that's it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.